Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. My name is Jordan Amirkhani. I'm a curator with Rivers Institute for Contemporary Art and Thought. And on behalf of everyone at Rivers and everyone at the Amistad Research Center, I'm really grateful for all of you being here tonight with us. It's going to be very special. I am very delighted and honored to stand in as host and moderator for this evening's program of music, poetry, and conversation with musician Leyla McCalla and poet, writer, educator, and activist, just to name a few things, Kalamu ya Salaam. That's right. That's right. We gather here tonight to celebrate, to learn, and to listen to two New Orleans artists working and engaging with the histories, the transatlantic diasporas, and material cultures of this city that we call home. And it's my real honor to introduce both of them to you tonight. Leyla McCalla is a Haitian-American multi-instrumentalist based in New Orleans and is known for music that vibrates with 3 centuries of history, that blends New Orleans influences and Haitian rhythms on cello, banjo, and guitar, with lyrics sung in English, French, and Haitian Kreyol. In addition to her solo work, McCalla is the co-founder of Our Native Daughters with Rhiannon Giddens, Amythyst Kiah, and Allison Russell, and was the cellist for Grammy-award-winning string band the Carolina Chocolate Drops. Leyla's last release, Breaking the Thermometer, distributed by Anti Records, is the album companion to a multidisciplinary music, dance, and theater work, which follows Leyla's personal journey as she uncovers the history of Radio Haiti, the first radio station in Haiti to report news in Haitian Kreyol. Breaking the Thermometer was named one of the best albums of 2022 by many outlets. And more than that, Leyla is also our 5th Amistad-Rivers artist research resident. And it is, yes. And it is in this capacity that she joins us tonight to sing and speak about her experiences and discoveries in Amistad's archives. Kalamu ya Salaam is a working poet, playwright, essayist, literary and cultural critic, short story writer, editor, and activist, to name just a few things. Photographer as well. His community-based work includes participation in such organizations as the World Black and African Festival of Arts and Culture, the Free Southern Theater, which in 1969 changed its name to Black Arts South, among others. He was a founding member and editor for 13 years of the Black Collegian magazine, executive director of the New Orleans Jazz Heritage Foundation, and was employed as the director of the Lower Ninth Ward Neighborhood Health Center. His first plays produced by the Free Southern Theater include The Picket, 1968, Black Liberation Army, 1969, Homecoming, 1970, and Black Love Song, 1971, again, just to name a few things. Early volumes of poetry include The Blues Merchant and Pamoja Tushinda, 1974, Revolutionary Love in 1978. Literary and scholarly works include Tearing the Roof Off the Sucker, which is the best title ever, from 1977, Nuclear Power and the Black Liberation Struggle, 1978, Iron Flowers, a poetic report on a visit to Haiti, 1979, Our Women Keep Our Skies from Falling, 1980, and later on, Cosmic Deputy, Poetry in Context, 1968 to 2019, The Magic of Juju, and Appreciation of the Black Arts Movement, 2016. Significant to our discussion tonight is Salaam's compilation of New Orleans Griot, the Tom Dent Reader from 2018, which was part of the 2020 One Book, One New Orleans selection, and Be About Beauty from 2018, which won the Penn Oakland Award in 2019. His works are published in major African-American literature anthologies and continue earlier themes of liberation and empowerment at the cultural and political levels, rendering him one of the most prolific and significant writers and creators of African-American discourse in this century and the last. It is an honor to have you here tonight, Mr. Salaam.
Don't believe it.
Before we begin with a song from Leyla and a reading from Kalamu, respectively, and then we'll break into a short conversation, I would like to just extend some thanks to the organizations and individuals who make events like this possible. I extend a great thank you to the Mellon Foundation for their continued support of this research residency between Rivers and Amistad. Thank you to Kathy Hambrick, Executive Director of the Amistad Research Center, for her support of this partnership. Thank you to Amistad's Head of Research Services, Lisa Moore, for sharing her vast knowledge with our visiting artists. Thank you to Amistad-Rivers Assistant Curator Jade Flint for the work she has done to shape visiting artists' experiences and engagement with Amistad's holdings. Thank you to the Executive Director and Chief Curator of Rivers Institute, Andrea Anderson, for visioning and materializing this program so that we might share it with this community, and who sadly can't be here with us tonight. And thank you to Rivers Institute's Deputy Director of Administration, Jennifer Francino, for the excellence and care in managing the complicated moving parts of this grant and program. I extend my appreciations and thanks to Alex Marks and J.R. Thompson for helping us capture this event tonight. Thank you. And thank you to the staff of the New Orleans Jazz Museum for all their help in coordinating the success of this evening. And no one came here to see me. I definitely know that. So with that, we shall turn to Leyla to get our evening started with a song, and then to Kalamu with a poem. Thank you.
Well, this is a really exciting evening for me. It's just really, I discovered Kalamu's work through my research at the Amistad Research Center and through this collaboration with Rivers. And as we've been talking this evening, I said to him, you know, my first record was released in tribute to Langston Hughes. And he's like, that's why I said yes to being here. And so I really appreciated that. And I'm going to sing one of my Langston Hughes songs. This one's called Search. I'm going to actually search for a way to feel comfortable first. All life is but the climbing of a hill to seek the sun that ranges far beyond. Confused with stars and lesser lights anon, and planets where the darkness reigns still. All life is but the seeking for that sun that never lets one living atom die. The flames beyond the circles of the eye, where never and forever are as one. I'm seeking always through this human span that spreads its drift of years beneath the sky. Confused with living, go with simple man, unknowing and unknown into the why. All life is but the climbing of a hill to seek the sun that ranges far beyond. Confused with stars and lesser lights anon, and planets where the darkness reigneth still. All life is but the seeking for that sun that never lets one living atom die. The flames beyond the circles of the eye, where never and forever are as one. Seeking always through this human span, spreads its drift of years beneath the sky. Confused with living, go with simple men, unknowing and unknown, into the why that flings itself beyond the sun, and back in space to where time was begun. All life is but the climbing of a hill.
So I'm supposed to do something intelligent.
You don't have to.
Oh, I can beat myself. How y'all doing? Okay. Last place I was at when I asked people a question first, you barely heard a murmur from them. I'm glad to hear you respond and let me know that you're alive. And do not take for granted being alive at this time because there's so much going on in the world. And when I got the invitation and they said, Leyla, I said, but of course, there are connections that we have that we don't know we have. All of us have connections to each other. We're not aware of them. I was fortunate. I had been to Haiti from the north to the south, came in at Port-au-Prince and ended up going north all the way to Cape Haitian, then to the Citadel, and then back down south to Jacmel, which looks a lot like old New Orleans. Y'all don't know nothing about it, but don't worry about it. And so I spent almost a week in Haiti. And between that and knowing about Leyla, which I'm sure that some of you are fans of Leyla, and if you're not, you should be. That was why I said yes, because she was involved in putting this program together. So I'm gonna read this little piece called Freedom, a Haitian rant. What many people may not know is that New Orleans has close ties to Haiti, particularly New Orleans, Black folk in New Orleans. That diaspora is very close. After we ran our oppressors into the sea, you have since never tired trying to run us into the ground. After we ran our oppressors into the sea, you have never tired trying to run us into the ground. After the earth opened its jaws to swallow us, your assistants rushed in to bury us. You say we cannot govern. Our government is corrupt. Who kidnapped Aristide? The president we elected. A priest who made our world work and not simply prayed for miracles. In fact, we elected him twice, and twice you took your guns and made him leave and would not let us vote for anything he represented. Our government is not corrupt. Corrupt is the government you put in our president's place. Our government is in exile. You swear we're not capable of caring for ourselves. Perhaps we are too busy servicing your sex tourists, making your Mickey Mouse clothes, and sewing your balls you love to play with. Y'all don't know that baseballs were made, many of them are made in Haiti. You say everyone envies your freedom. Yet it was not our soldiers, was it not? Yes, it was. Yes, it was our soldiers who saved, saved George Washington's ass in Savannah. This is historical fact. When you were fighting for your freedom, but you never gave us credit for helping to create your freedom. And worse yet, when you got your precious freedom, your precious freedom, you did not give freedom to all your citizens. We in Haiti were the first truly free country in all of the Americas. We in Haiti were the first true of all the Americas. Everyone was declared free in our new republic. Everyone. Red, black, white, yellow, or brown. No one was enslaved in free Haiti. It took you almost a century to free your enslaved people. Yes, not until 1865 did you even halfway declare all of your male citizens as Haiti was free on day one of our birth. Tell me I am wrong, but I believe you did not let women vote until 1920. No one knows our history. No one who knows our history envies your 2/5 free history. You say we are poor, but when will you give us back the money you set Marines to steal from us in 1915 when you invaded us and took over our banks? No matter how long a thief keeps what he stole, no matter how many generations gone, he is still a thief. He is still, which is why one of your presidents, the pedophile Thomas Jefferson, who took up with a 13-year-old, famously said, quote, "When I think that God is just, I tremble for the for the fate of my country. When we think that God is just, we just smile and pray the day of reckoning will soon come. Beautiful as a Jacmel sunrise. We are Haitian. We love freedom. Who are you? And what do you love?"
Wow. Thank you for starting us there. Throw my first questions out now. I want to get back to this notion of the ways in which all you both feel connected in a variety of ways, and we'll talk about Haiti in a second. I'd like to start with both of you to talk about archives, because that's why we're here under this umbrella of the Amistad Research Center's wonderful, incredible holdings, the ways in which you spent time there, Leyla, this past year. researching and discovering things, and the ways I think in which you, Mr. Salaam, are a living archive in so many kinds of ways, literarily, socially, culturally, politically. So I think that's maybe a way to begin. Leyla, I'll start with you maybe as a first question. You spent time in the in Amistad Research Center's archives this spring, doing a number of things. The first part of which was just being in the archives, working with Jade Flint and Lisa Moore and others to start with materials that made sense for you, that you were interested in, that you wanted to see, and also doing a lot of kind of live discovery in the archives too.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'd love to hear about your time in the archives, what you did while you were there, and what discoveries you made.
Sure. Yeah, it's so interesting because I entered this artist residence sort of on the heels of my last project, which was also based in archival research. I was my last record and the sort of multimedia project that was referenced earlier is a project called Breaking the Thermometer to Hide the Fever. It was commissioned by Duke University, and it invited me to do all of this research at the Radio Haiti archive and to turn that into a multimedia performance. We ended up, premiered at the university literally like a week before the global shutdown with the pandemic, which is a very interesting thing to have conceptualize a piece called Breaking the Thermometer. And then I think I literally had COVID while I was performing it. And, fever being the primary symptom of COVID-19, I find a lot of sort of tie-ins to that. But, we also performed at the CAC. The piece incorporates original and arranged music by myself, was directed by Kyoko McCrae, and a dance, a video projection design, and sound design. And so this was like, I walked into the project really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and very enthusiastic and excited. And I was like, whoa, wait, what is devised theater? What are we doing? And so it was a huge, huge, huge learning process. And I say that because I think this collaboration with the Rivers Institute and the Amistad Research Center was a lot more open-ended. It wasn't like, yes, and then you will create this product and this will be the goal. It was like, we want you to go and just explore and enrich your mind and, kind of follow what you feel drawn to. And so I was like, whoa, okay, that's a lot of, a lot of options, a lot of possibilities. It's impossible to enter an archive and to cover every inch of it. And especially with such limited time and, generous, but also limited resources. And so it's been an interesting thing to be like, okay, well, what am I drawn to? And I remember saying to Andrea Anderson, who kind of brought me into the Rivers fold, and told her, I wanna explore new sounds. I wanna like challenge my artistry. I want to find new threads and new connection. And I just want to like release this sort of idea of this limiting idea of myself as like just like a folk cellist, whatever that is. And then I find myself discovering the papers of Tom Dent, who I think of him as the Langston Hughes of New Orleans. He's not a household name, but I'm sure we'll get more into that in our conversation. But he was a writer. He was a playwright. He started the Southern Repertory Theater.
Free Southern Theater.
The Free Southern Theater, exactly.
He didn't start it. He was one of the people that, when the Free Southern Theater was founded in '65 in Jackson, Mississippi, by Gilbert Moses, John O'Neill, and Doris Derby. And then the theater moved to New Orleans. When the theater moved to New Orleans, he was there and became the director of the Free Southern Theater when the other directors Doris refused to leave Jackson for New Orleans. Gilbert went on his various things, trying to do a musician. He was from Ohio. And John O'Neill was conscientious objector to the Vietnam War and was sentenced to serve time in New York City.
Mm.
So Tom was the only one who was here to continue the work
take
of
it over. Yeah.
the
So
Southern Theater.
yeah, so I was discovering basically, the life story and sort of legacy of this poet, who, in all of his writings, I think poetry was a very prominent thread. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I said that I wanted to move away from this whole folk cellist thing, and here I am discovering the Langston Hughes of New Orleans and thinking about writing music to his poetry. I'm like, should I do it? Should I do something different? And so it was just like, continuing to conceptualize, like, his work means to me. And for me, it's more just, I think I'm drawn to archival work and archival research because there are so many stories that need to be told. And I love the process of finding a thread to even follow. Maybe I'll write music to Tom Dent's poems one day, maybe to your poems one day, but I think that's besides the point. I think that just to have the space as an artist to discover and to explore, and then I started talking to other people, and I'm like, no one's heard of Tom Dent. How is that possible? Because this has been so impactful and so powerful and so beautiful to engage with and discover. And it just, I think that's why I love archives, because there's so many heroes, walking around our world, and archives store their information and introduce us to them. And yeah, my research went in many different threads, which is partially how I discovered you, because I was like, well, a lot of, you know, I will say, I'm the mother of 3 small children. I was like, I have to find a way to dig into this work. And I discovered something called the Tom Dent Reader. So I went to Octavia Books, and I saw that Kalamu is the person that compiled all of the information and wrote the foreword to the Tom Dent Reader. So then I remember writing a line under your name, and I looked up your name, and all of your work came up, and I was just like, I remember telling you, Jade. I remember telling Jade, who is the archival expert and assistant and the finder of all things in the archive. I remember saying, I really want to find a way to be in touch with this poet, Kalamu, because his work is so interesting. And, I didn't even know that you had traveled in Haiti in the 70s, and that's just lanyap. So anyway, I'll stop there. But yeah.
No, I will say that, one of Amistad's most important and significant collections is the Tom Dent papers. And, for those who have not heard Tom Dent's name, I hope you will all go out into the world and find everything that you can to learn about him, because he's such an incredibly important figure. And, as Kalamu said, born in New Orleans. And, in his early career, in New York, he worked with Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. He returned to New Orleans in 1965, where he worked with the Free Southern Theater and Bob Costley. He founded the Free Southern Theater Writing Workshop. He edited anthologies and histories of the Free Southern Theater with Richard Schechner and Gilbert Moses, as you mentioned earlier. And with you, Kalamu, he edited the Black Literary Arts magazine Nakambo and the Press Nakambo. And I'd like just to begin there, because I think I would love to hear about your working relationship with Tom Dent, because it feels like such a special collaboration and project that you and personal relationship that you found yourself in with Mr. Dent. And I'd love to hear about how you encountered each other in the 60s and 70s and what that meant.
Um, I was born Lower Ninth Ward, 1947. Jump ahead to 1968. I just came back from the Army, had been stationed in South Korea.
Hmm.
When I came back, my girlfriend at the time, Delma Thomas, had written me and told me that there were 3 theater companies in New Orleans, black theater companies, and she recommended that I work with the Free Southern Theater. The other 2 were Dashiki Theater, which was uptown New Orleans, run by Ted Gilliam, who was a professor at Dillard University. And Charles Self was running the 3rd company. I forget the name of the company. He was a playwright. And I became friends with one of the people who was working with Charles Self. But as I checked out the 3 companies, the Free Southern Theater was to my liking. And I come back in 1968, and there's this tall gentleman sitting in a small building, Law and Lausette Street, in the upper Ninth Ward, right across the canal from Desire Projects. And it would seem that he and I, by background, had nothing in common. But y'all know how it is to fall in love, right? That's what happened. I mean, Tom and I literally became more than just friends. And Tom and I traveled a lot together throughout the South, a lot of places in Mississippi. You got to understand the Free Southern Theater at that time. I'll tell you a little joke. We were getting ready we had the itineraries being passed out, right? And our itinerary said, I wasn't paying any attention to what was on the paper. I said, just tell me where we're going next. Going to Utah, and then we're going to, I said, Utah? How many black people they got in Utah? And I was quickly corrected. Said, man, they got a lot of black people in Utah, Alabama. There's a place called Utah, Alabama. EUTAW. They got a lot of black people there. And that's where we were going. And I am ever thankful for Tom and the wisdom of the Free Southern Theater in introducing me to black folk throughout the South, not in film, not in books, but by actually going there. Like One Direction to go to Harmony, Mississippi, was when you get off the highway, get on the state road, and when you come to the big tree, turn left. I said, man, what big tree? They said, you'll know it when you get to it. You turn left at the big tree, and you go back up in the woods. And after you drive a little while, you'll come to Harmony. Harmony, Mississippi, by the big tree. And that's where we went. And so a lot of people don't understand what it means. What Walter Rodney meant. Walter Rodney is a black intellectual from Guyana. What he meant when he said grounding with my brothers. To be actually grounded with the people, not through books, television, and film, but from going there and being with the people. That's what we did. That's what Tom introduced me to. And I won't go into any more stories, but we got bunches of stories about just driving through Mississippi, Alabama, what have you, and meeting people on the ground. And that's where I got a lot of my early education. And Tom and I drove many a day and night throughout the Well, throughout Mississippi, northern Louisiana was a disaster. I'll tell you that much. But Mississippi and Alabama was our primary uh, places.
Were you conducting oral histories during these trips?
Y'all
was
got
your-
me confused with an intellectual.
No, because I know that was something that Tom did across his life. which is
What we
interesting.
did was we talked to people,
Yeah.
and as writers, when we got back, he would write something, I would write something. We would take turns just writing down stuff that we remembered from talking with people.
Yeah.
And that's where we got it from. Actually working, until you travel and be with the people, you don't know shit. You really don't. Not about how this world works. And that's how we
Mm.
that's how I got an education. And at the same time I was quote unquote traveling the world. So I in one sense, people would say I am an intellectual. I've been to China, stood on the Great Wall of China and all that kind of stuff. You know, Tanzania, Zanzibar, land of the blacks in East Africa. We were talking about Ghana, West Africa, sitting under a tree at night. You ain't got nowhere else to go because you can't go no place else. So you sit under a tree and talk to each other and talk to people. We don't do that much today. I'm willing to bet that there are not 5 people in this room that spend their nights talking with people. I don't even do it anymore. But that was my groundation. That was how I came to an understanding, talking with people here and all over the world. You know, Suriname, Nicaragua, Nicaragua, as we used to say. You know, I stopped.
Wow. One of the things that I mentioned to you before we started this evening was the way in which I sort of place you and Tom Dent together is you're both authors and editors of anthologies. And I really feel that anthologies are kind of like portable archives. In a flood, in a storm, you can take an anthology with you. You can carry a book to another place. They're these incredible sort of creating your own canon of authors and writers who you want to take into the future with you for a new generation.
It's a funny story, but Tom Dent, I'm gonna come back to Leyla in a minute because I got a story about her too. She don't know.
Oh. Uh-oh.
But Tom Dent and I were very close up until the time. In fact, I left for Germany the week that he died, passed on. I was in Munich, Germany when he passed on. But in any case, for many years we were together. Then, well after his passing, Abram Himmelstein at the University of New Orleans Press asked me if I wanted to do a project on Tom Dent, a book. And I said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. Little did I know. And the housing of the Tom Dent collection was at the Amistad Research Center. And so I went up there and they had a cabinet, 6-foot cabinet full of Tom Dent's writings. I did not know how much work Tom had done because he didn't publish that much.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would go by Tom all the time, he would be writing and I would sit there and he'd say, here's a book, this, that, so forth. And he'd point to a book and sit there. And so I knew that he wrote a lot, but I never read a lot of his writings because he didn't publish as much as he wrote. He wrote every day, constantly, but he didn't publish that much. And it was only when I started doing the Tom Dent Reader that I became aware of the voluminous work that he had done as a writer.
Yeah.
And I knew him, and I was surprised because, you know, some of y'all is married, right? And you think you know your partner. And then one day you say, I never knew that about you. Am I right?
Yeah.
This is life. We can be lovers, and there's so much we don't know about each other, right? Tom was like that. He and I had keys to his place. You know, we traveled all over, but there were things I didn't know about him until he passed, and I was doing the research for the Tom Dent Reader.
Mhm.
That's why, in one sense, I think you're right about the importance of anthologies, but it can't be just any anthology.
Mhm.
You know, I wish that all of you all who are lovers would write an anthology about your lover.
Some people look skeptical out there.
Are you fired up?
But no, you're right. There are so many things that get made and done in a life, and collecting them, particularly someone so close with you after they're gone, that's a very special gift, I think, and responsibility, I would say.
Yeah, okay. But the Layla story. See, we met long time ago, but I didn't know her then, and she didn't know me. And I was in the background because there was a recording session going on, and Akua, Carol Bebel, had asked Layla to be on one of the pieces that she done, and Carol had asked me, would I help her with the recording? So I was there. And I met Layla at that time. This is years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I met her at that time, but I didn't know her. And so over the years, I would see her name and I'd follow up and so forth in terms of what she was doing, who she was working with. You mentioned who's that, Giddens and
Rhiannon Giddens, yeah.
Rhiannon Giddens and some of the other people.
Allison Russell, Amythyst, Kiah.
Yeah, all of that. So I was aware of that. And then I get this call, would you do something with, Leyla McCalla? I said, yeah, I do it. Because the world is round, but it's crooked just the same. That's a blues song, by the way, Willie Dixon. There's so much we know that we don't know we know. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we know that we don't know we know. And it's only until we are brought together. And that's the importance of artists such as this. And she's singing songs and so forth. And so she had no way of knowing that, non-religious me has Langston Hughes as a patron saint.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started reading about your love of Langston Hughes, I paid close attention, and that's how you got really on my radar then. The meaning was just fortuitous. I mean, it was just one of the many things I did. But when I read about your love of Langston Hughes, that immediately upped my respect for you as an artist, because he was someone that traveled the world also. And I had a deep respect for that. And so that's to answer your question. And this is why artists are important. Is because if they are truly artists, they will give us a deep respect for the world and for things to think about. Ourselves, the people whom we are close to, for women, particularly your children. And I say that specifically. I know there are some men who take umbrage at that, say, well, they are our children too. Not really. Not really. there's the man is few and far between that takes care of children the way women take care of children. I'll stop there.
I'd like to return us to the poem that you started with and to definitely sort of continue this conversation of the ways that in which you and Layla are connected. You visited Haiti, you mentioned. You've written a volume from 1979, I believe, Iron Flowers,
Yeah.
which takes up the liberation and revolutions of Haitians. And I would love to just sort of let you both, discuss the ways in which Haiti becomes a incredibly important part of the ways in which you think about yourself as an artist, as a person, and as an artist and person who live here in New Orleans. Because as you said, Kalamu, those things are unbelievably entangled and entwined.
So I moved to New Orleans, I guess, in 2010. And at the time, I was about 3 years out from graduating from NYU with a degree in classical cello performance, which I had long accepted that like classical cello performance wasn't going to be my life, but it was kind of like my currency at that time. And I met Tanya and Doris, who you probably have seen a million times on Royal Street, on the street in New York. And I was probably with my cello. It was a very random meeting, and they were like, "You should come to New Orleans and play in the street with us. That's what we do." And I was like, "That sounds amazing." So I found myself, I came down, I guess it was April of 2009, I feel like, and I stayed for a month. And I stayed with Doris. She gave me a bicycle, and I was playing in the quarter with them. And it wasn't, I'll be honest, it wasn't entirely my thing, but it was like, it gave me a window into the vitality of like creative life and music and culture and just like the immediacy, especially in the quarter in those days. And so I kind of started not by thinking like, of myself as anything but like an improvising cellist that could play by ear. Concurrently, I had started writing music to Langston Hughes's poetry, and I started something in New York called the Langston Hughes Project, which was basically a collection of my musician friends who were helping me to realize these songs. And I remember I had a few friends singing them, and I would always try to be like really, I was probably very annoying because I was kind of trying to direct how they would sing things. And one of my friends got really frustrated with me, and she said, "You should just sing it. How about you sing it?" And so I was like, okay, okay. And at that time, I didn't really consider myself a singer. That wasn't a part of my practice really at all. But I started singing these words, and it felt like I remember feeling like there was like an opening of creative expression, that was just like it immediately just like increased all the possibilities of what I could do as a performer, and that really excited me. And so I just mentioned that because when I moved to New Orleans, I was like playing Bach in the French Quarter. That was my thing. That's how I made a living. That's how I paid my rent. That's what made it possible for me to be here. And a lot of things happened that got me off the street. Not that it was such a problem. Actually, I feel like that was such a magical time in my life because it was like I can finally just like be a musician. I'd moved from New York where I was bartending and I was teaching, and I'd be up, making mojitos till 4 a.m. and then at a church at 7 a.m. playing in, a string quartet in a Baptist church in Brooklyn. And New Orleans gave me the space to be like, well, maybe you are an artist, and maybe you are a composer, and maybe you are a writer, and maybe you are a singer even, and maybe you can do all of these things. And it gave me this freedom that I just had never really had creatively prior to that time. And it was around that time that I read a book by Ned Sublette called The World That Made New Orleans.
Yeah.
Which I talk about that book constantly. I'm constantly recommending it to people because for me, it was the book that was like, aha, Haiti is here. Like, and I find myself like exactly in the place that I need to be to start to understand how I'm related, you know, to this place, New Orleans. What is the connection? Why am I so drawn to it? Why does it feel so vital and important to me? And so I started, I remember at that time I was, going to see a lot of trad jazz, and I was really falling in love with New Orleans traditional jazz. And I thought, wow, this is like so, it's so cool because there's so many young people who are exploring like Lindy Hop and exploring, traditional jazz, but it still felt very segregated to me, that style of music. And I remember thinking, I wonder what Haitian folk music is like. I wonder what Haitian, you know, uh, sort of traditional music sounds like. And I'd started playing the banjo because I was like, I'm gonna start a trad jazz band and I'm gonna play the banjo too. And I discovered, along the line that one of the first banjos ever found in the New World. I'd known that the banjo was of West African origin, but one of the first banjos discovered in the so-called New World was discovered in Haiti. And so I remember like looking for Haitian folk songs, and I went on the internet. I was Googling Haitian folk songs. I found this record called Haitian Folk Songs that came out in the 1950s and was on Smithsonian Folkways by a Haitian guitarist named Franz Cassius and a Puerto Rican born but Haitian raised singer named Lolita Cuevas. And it was like these really sort of classical interpretations of voodoo songs. And I just thought it was like the most beautiful music that I had ever heard. And then around that same time, it was just like very, synchronistic. The Gage Averill, who's an ethnomusicologist, he released a box set with the Library of Congress post Haiti earthquake. That was a compilation of all these different styles of Haitian music. I think there were 10 discs, and there was like a book with all of the lyrics. And I remember thinking, this is amazing. I have the music, I've got the words. It's just time to learn this music and put it all together. And that was that was kind of me discovering like the cosmology of Haitian music. And then connecting, the fact that the revolution in Haiti spurred so much immigration to Louisiana. It just like, I don't know, I was like in a storm of my own heritage and my ancestry, and these stories that I might have heard of snippets of that I was suddenly putting together. I started learning French. I started traveling in France a lot, and that I think connected me in some ways even more to, in a lot of ways, even more to Haitian culture, though I have to say it's been very confusing because I speak better French now than Kreyol, and I'm like, I didn't mean to do that. But that I feel like all of those things are kind of at the center of my relationship with this city. I feel, and at that time my mother was living in Haiti at the time. I would visit. I remember going to Jacmel, and at this point, I had been like playing music in the French Quarter and thinking to myself, like, this looks exactly like the French Quarter. Like, I can't believe I never noticed that, but I wouldn't have known that as a kid. I grew up in suburban New Jersey and in Queens in New York. So, yeah, it was, I feel like, this place is such a whirlwind. When as a Haitian American, it's such a whirlwind of ancestral connection, and then as an artist, on top of that, it is such a deeply generous. Maybe it was more so, 10, 15 years ago than it is now, because now rent is so high, but and the cost of living has become such a, I think, distraction probably from a lot of the art that we need to be making. But that's sort of my relationship with New Orleans. And yeah, I couldn't have made it up, but it was all very aligned.
The house you stayed in with Doris was across the street from Douglas.
Yep.
And Doris and I knew each other from Douglas before you came. Um, and Doris, before she started working solely on the streets,
Mm-hmm.
she was a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And she left the school because she got into argument with the vice principal.
Mm-hmm.
And this was around the time we also left. I worked with a program called Students at the Center. And so there are connections that are I sat on your porch, what became your porch, many a day. We would play chess on the porch
Mm-hmm.
after school with the students, teaching them how to play chess.
Hmm.
And people in the neighborhood will be walking by and so forth and so on. And so I'm just saying, as you talk about it, I didn't know about that, the connection with Doris,
Right.
because that was after
Yeah.
I had left there. But that place where you stayed, I sat right there on that porch
That's amazing.
with people talking about education for liberation,
Mm-hmm.
and we held our chess sections on the street because, and this may come as a surprise to many people, chess is one of the favorite activities of people in the joint who are locked up in the prison.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people would pass by, you know, who had been in the joint, and they would see us playing chess and say, "Can I play?" "Yeah, come on," and we sit and so forth and so on. There's so much about yourself you cannot know until you expose yourself and relate to others. There is so much of yourself that you cannot know until you expose yourself and relate to others. So we made a conscious decision, if you can imagine it, 3:30, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoons, sitting on a porch,
Mm-hmm.
literally sitting on the porch, not on chairs, just sitting on the side of the porch
Mm-hmm.
with a chessboard, and dudes be passing. "Hey man, can I play too?" "Yeah, you can play. Come on." And
Yeah.
and we are most of us are afraid of ourselves and each other
Mm-hmm.
because this society teaches us to be alienated from each other. All of us today have phones, but that phone we enjoy alone. That is our private fire. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when we're on the phone, we're not concerned with those around us. And that's not a put down of people. That's just the time period we live in. But you have to recognize the importance of relating to other people. And I didn't know anything about you knowing Doris. And I knew Doris, so we worked together for a long time. And as I said, I sat on a porch, but we never discussed this before. This just came up. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, Doris, I feel like I haven't talked to her in years, but I feel like she had such a huge impact on my life just by saying, "You need to come and experience this place." And I remember that, just that generosity of someone just inviting me into their home and setting me up. I mean, I had like, I had a bicycle with like a little bike carrier that I put my cello in. And I remember just feeling very held, by her. So that's a beautiful connection. What was your question?
May not matter. No, I was just going to ask you about Iron Flowers. Kalamu.
Iron Flowers, I'm in Haiti. Started walking around as is my wont whenever I've traveled a lot. And this has to do with, see how can I explain this to you? I'm a big black man. So I don't have fears for my personal safety that many other people have as they walk around.
Mm.
because instinctively, I feel like if you want to come on, bring it, you know. And so that's the way I walk through the world. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Most of us physically are not big black people. I'm talking about in this room here. I'm not saying most of us in the world, because the world, I look more like the world. And that's another story. But if you don't have a certain amount of physical security, you cannot just go anywhere and do anything. And I have a feeling I can go anywhere and do anything. So in Haiti, and if you've never been to Haiti, you won't understand this. In Haiti, I was never alone. I'm walking around. I get out and walk around. I'm walking around and I see this white wall. And I knew instinctively, being from New Orleans, that's a cemetery. I knew that before I even got close to it. I knew what it was. And of course, when I went inside, they had flowers on the graves, but the flowers were made of tin and iron and painted.
Mm.
That's where iron flowers comes from. That's where the name comes from.
Mm.
Because when I went inside the cemetery, I saw the flowers, and the flowers, people are so poor, they could not afford to buy flowers, carnations and roses and what have you. So they had pieces of tin and iron that had been cut and painted.
Mm.
That's where iron flowers came from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking maybe as a way to culminate this incredible conversation that I feel very privileged to be a very small part of. We will end this program with poetry and music like we started. But Leyla, I just want you to share that the second half of your residency, first part was in the archives.
Mm-hmm.
The second part was you in the Rivers house writing a lot of new music.
Yeah. Yeah.
It will be a new, brand new, gorgeous thing out
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah. So I have a record coming out in April. It hasn't been officially announced, but you know, the songs are inspired by a lot of things, but certainly inspired by stories that I read in the archives, particularly activists doing work in the 60s to end segregation and to get more Black voters registered. You know, I have a lot of feelings about what voting means, but I just so admired their bravery and, you know, just found so many interesting stories and, you know, even just like guides for organizers doing organizing work. I really kind of was digging into the sort of like Adrienne Marie Brown um, and Emergent Strategy was a book that I really dug into. Another book called Liberated to the Bone by Susan Raffo, and another book called Undrowned by Alexis Pauline Gum. So all of these things have kind of contributed to the creation of this new work, while also trying to detach from this idea that I need to be commenting on other people's experiences or other people's lives and kind of digging into my own personal experience and, um, you know, further exploring my place in the world. Anyway, the album is called Sun Without the Heat, and I'm going to play for you that song.
And really quickly before you,
Sure.
I have the full quote of Frederick
Yeah.
Douglass from which this line,
Yeah.
the title track and the title of your record comes, and I'd just like to read it before you play.
Yeah.
This is from Frederick Douglass's 1857 speech, West India Emancipation. This is the philosophy of reform. The whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. The conflict has been exciting agitating, all absorbing, and for the time being, putting all other tumults to silence. It must do this or it does nothing. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters.
You want the crops without the plow. You want the rain without the thunder. You want the ocean without the roar of its waters. Can't have the sun without the heat. Nothing that I say hasn't been said before. Nothing that I feel hasn't been felt before. These wounds are so old. These wounds are so old. These wounds are so old. These wounds. You want the crops without the plow. You want the rain without the thunder. You want the ocean without the roar of its waters. Can't have the sun without the heat. So much waste, so much waste. The waste of the city in the city lights, weighing so heavy on our minds. 'Cause nothing is right, and there's so much wrong. Only we can save ourselves. The road is so long. These wounds are so old. These wounds are so old. These wounds are so old. These wounds. You want the crops without the plow. You want the rain without the thunder. You want the ocean without the roar of its waters. Can't have the sun without the heat. You want the rain without the thunder. You want the ocean without the roar of its waters. Can't have the sun without the heat.
Y'all give a hand. Leyla. We may not realize it, but it's very important that we have artists such as Leyla who have the type of vision that encompasses a lot of different people and pull them together. They got a lot of people that are literate that can write stuff. Got a lot of people that can talk, but we have very few people that know how to pull it all together like she does. I ain't just saying it, I'm telling you. You know, there's so much I've learned that I did not know about you, such as the thing with Doris. She had no way of knowing that Doris and I worked together at Douglas.
Yeah.
And so she's sitting on Doris, I mean, literally across the side street. It's right across, less than 20 feet away.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that is part of like the beautiful synchronicity of the city. I find it happens endlessly. It's like the cipher is just always,
Yeah.
you know, turning, and so I love that. I love that. I feel like I could talk to this man for another the 10, 15, 20 years. And we wouldn't get bored.
I hope you do in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hope this is the first
Maybe we
conversation of
will.
many.
Maybe we will.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Kalamu, would you like to end our evening with a poem?
Oh, okay.
Can you read
What?
Duvalier's Toilet Seat?
Oh,
Yeah, we should end there. That would be a good way.
when I was in Haiti, on the way out, spent about a week there, I guess. But on the way out at the airport, there was a sign on the wall at Baby Doc, Jean-Claude Duvalier had put up, and it said, my father, I'm paraphrasing, my father created the political revolution. I am here to create the economic revolution. However, the sign was in a place where the sun shone on it for most of the day. And the bottom of the sign, the economic revolution part, had been almost bleached out by the sun. And I just thought it was
Perfect.
summation. So this is many years later, I wrote this poem called Jean-Claude's Toilet Seat. And for those of us who are intellectuals, the voice of the poem is in the voice of the toilet seat talking. So imagine a toilet seat talking. I've seen a lot of shit in my days, especially at night when he thinks no one can see him take a dump. But the aroma fouls the atmosphere for weeks. Air freshener does not help. The candles work to cleanse the air, but he can't stand the light. Sometimes he squats on me just to pass gas. That is how he contemplates his future moves. Most thrones are plastic. I am carved ivory tusk from the Congo. I know the true him. He takes me everywhere. I have my own encasement and always travel first class. I am better than a pet, more reliable than a gun. If it is true, you are what you eat. It is even truer, you have been what you shit. Thank you. Thank you.
You get it all when you come to a reverse event.
Very real, very real.
You get it all. Thank you so much for being here with us, Mr. Salaam. What a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Leyla, for being a rich and generous resident. And thank you for the time that you've spent with us tonight.